This week's podcast is brought to you by Avast, a global leader in digital security and family safety solutions for network operators and their customers. The needs of consumers are changing. Wherever they are, wherever they go, whatever device they use, they expect their digital lives to be seamless, simple, safe, and secure. With over 15 years of experience delivering award-winning security solutions with network operators, Avast makes it easy for consumers to manage their digital life security using just one simple interface. That's security for all devices, wherever they are and however they connect. Let Avast help you build a safer digital world for your customers. Discover more at avast.com/partners. That's avast.com/partners. Welcome to the Light Reading Podcast. I'm Phil Harvey. I'm an editor here at Light Reading, and I am joined on this podcast by my Light Reading colleague, Kelsey Ziser. And our guest today is Kazu Gomi, the president and CEO of NTT Research. On this show, we'll discuss NTT Research, its mission, its formation, and we'll talk about the group's work on a new initiative called the Innovative Optical and Wireless Network, or IOwn for short. We'll cover all of that and much, much more right after the break. All right, we're talking to Kazu Gomi from NTT Research, and my first question is to do with NTT Research itself. What led to the creation of NTT Research? Because this just happened a little bit less than a year ago, I think. Is that correct?
First of all, thanks for having me. My name is Kazu Gomi. I'm the CEO of a company called NTT Research. Yes, that we have opened our research center in Silicon Valley, Palo Alto, California, last year, July. So a little less than 1 year ago. And what we are basically tasked to do is to expand NTT's R&D activities outside of Japan and going into the heart of Silicon Valley, where, needless to say, most of the technologies are born and incubated and then grown to the real business. So we need to start this operation here, and for various reasons behind it. Certainly, one of the big thing is that this is the place that we have better access to the talent, which is that the most important one, definitely the most important part to carry out the research activities. So that's a quick kind of outline of what NTT Research is and then how we started.
And you also recently started the Innovative Optical and Wireless Network Global Forum, or IOwn. Can you tell us a little bit more about what the impetus was behind starting that? And I believe you also worked on it with Intel and Sony. Is that right?
So let me explain about IOwn, IOWN, which is short of Innovative Optical and Wireless Network. So this is that initiatives that NTT has launched along with Intel and Sony in end of October last year. So let me explain a little bit what's behind it. When you look at the current information communication technology market, it is blossoming, needless to say. There are many interesting technologies became available from the perspective of IoT, big data, all kinds of automations, and AI. So those things created, I think going into digital is another kind of buzzword everybody's talking about. And this is not just buzzword. It's a lot of things are really happening in a meaningful way. So, which is great. And then I'm sure that there are many more advancement a human will create even from here. However, when you look at the horizon of, well, I don't know, maybe 2, 3 years or 5 years down the road, there are some concerning factors as well that somebody has to start worrying about. Those are the things like a couple of things I can name. Number one, that the energy consumptions of all the IT systems. Well, needless, many of the listeners hear about the energy consumptions at the data centers. And NTT runs many data centers around the world, and then we know how it's like from that angle. We are consuming a lot of energy there, and it's certainly well, we are managing it, but I don't know how much longer can we sustain. That's number one. Number two is that well, related to the first issue too, but the Moore's law that integrate, that how much more transistors and the computing powers into the silicon chip. There's definitely and the Moore's law has been predicting over the last 30 plus years that it has been making advancement year after year after year. Now, over the last couple of years, we start seeing the end of the Moore's law, that we cannot shove in more stuff into the chips anymore. So that requires more. I think we have to put more chips into the machines, or stacking up more machines to create the required capacity of computations and whatever. So that really leading to the more energy problem. So those are the things, and of course that security and the privacy issues. More connected we are, those issues has been identified over the years. However, I think the more connected we are, the security and privacy is becoming more and more crucial problem. So energy consumption, and then the behind the scene Moore's law and the security privacy. Those are the major concerns. And then if we don't address those issues in a good way, those innovations through the digital AI, IoT, maybe need to be slowed down and everything. Therefore, NTT recognized that the future problem, and then decided to start this kind of initiatives called IOwn to address those issues. So what IOwn really means is, and IOwn is trying to cover a lot of things. So it's the name IOwn says again, innovative optical wireless network. So it kind of gives you an impression that it's just talking about network, but network is certainly one of the important components of this initiatives, but it covers even bigger agendas.
Okay, so it seems like a pretty big mission then to improve. You mentioned power consumption. I also saw on the website, reducing latency and improving transmission capacity for optical networks. So sounds like a lot to take on, really.
Yeah, it is. And let me go a little bit deeper on that. So that latencies, and you mentioned about Kelsey, the latencies and stuff. That's a little more pure network type of solutions, and in a way that issues and the solutions that we're trying to come up with. Here's what we are looking at as a part of this IOwn initiatives. Obviously, we've been using optical technologies to run that network over the years, maybe 30, 40 years in the past, that we we saw a great improvements in capacities and then certainly the latencies of a network throughout the world, and using optical technology, optical devices, and so on and so forth. And then that led to basically today's internet, and then all of those good thing that happened. But what we are seeing is that we can even make this agenda to the next step. What I mean by that is that when you look at today's optical network, yes, we use fiber optics and lasers and for the transmissions. However, when it comes to the switching and then the switching fabrics and all that, the core of the switching fabric today is using basically silicon chips, basically the electronics to run those things. We are seeing the potential to swap it or to change it more all photonics based. So meaning that even those switching and then the routing capabilities, we may be able to use the all photonics network. By doing so, a couple of benefits we should be able to achieve by doing so. One is that lower latencies and we're definitely bigger capacities that we should be able to provide, and then therefore we should be able to. Something we're thinking about is that applying that the end-to-end, that the single basically wavelength applied to some end-to-end communication pairs. So by doing so, that we can minimize the latencies of packet, creating packets and all that. There are some applications that requires that type of that the real timeness, especially for the case of remote medicines and all that. Ideally, the medical applications or some sort of controlling factors of big factories and so on and so forth, using remote computation powers elsewhere, and then do that more direct manipulation of those some sensitive stuff. So those are typical kind of thing that the low latencies network we should be able to create over the years, and then the application of that is there, and then also that by using those optical based switching fabrics and then the routing engines, we should be able to lower the energy consumptions. So that's something we're looking at, and so that's the more pure network side of the house. But above and beyond that we are also looking at the computers, computing power itself, and then even for the storage devices, applying the optical devices to that area. Again, by doing so, we are hoping and we are looking at that the better capacities, and then also that the lower energy consumptions. So that's certainly one aspect of this IOwn initiative.
So we've been talking a lot about the innovative optical and wireless network global forum that NTT is working on, and discussed, some focus areas on improving power consumption, reducing latency, and improving transmission capacity levels in photonics networks. So what are some other technical problems that IOwn is tackling now?
IOwn is basically looking at something down the road, kind of technologies. And then, as you mentioned, one of the key components, well, there are a couple of key components of the IOwn from the perspective of power consumption to address the power consumption issues and also the low latencies and to try to achieve the latency issues. And those are the key aspect of it. But let me just step back a little bit and trying to explain what IOwn is trying to achieve. So in reality, IOwn is trying to achieve a little bit bigger problems. That the problem set that we are seeing right now is following. So when you look at the current marketplace around the digital transformations, around that all kinds of new technologies, especially around big data and AIs and all of and that IoT and all those things. These are great, and I think are creating a lot of value to it. And more applications, I would imagine, will come to fruition for the coming years. But we're also at the same time looking at some kind of concerning issues when you look down 3, 4, 5 years down the road. And those are the issues around, we talked about power consumptions, one of them. And then that the other part of the issues that we see when you look at the future is that Moore's law limitations. We certainly kind of start seeing the limitations of the Moore's law and no more further integrate, kind of shoving down that more transistors in the chip. We definitely hit that, start seeing that the physical limitations towards that. And then a little bit outside of those issues, we see that the more connected the world becomes, certainly security, privacy, those issues will become more, I think, becoming even bigger. It's not going to go smaller. Right? I think we need to address it even further. So those are the kind of problem set that we are looking at. Again, we need to address those issues for the more sustainable growth of that of basically the humankind and the whole industry as a whole. So,
right, you mentioned security and privacy, and those are definitely front of mind, I know, for a lot of service providers, but also just a lot of consumers and individuals. And I feel like those issues are just getting more and more complicated as we go on. So, like you said, those definitely won't disappear as big issues anytime soon.
Exactly. So I want, in a way, try to address those issues. And again, those issues are, some of them are already here today, but it will become bigger when you look at 3, 4, 5 years down the road. And then we start working on to address those issues basically today, so that we can release something 3, 4, 5 years down the road. So anyway, that's where we are coming from, and then NTT has some R&D, some of the activities that we have built over the time, and then we have some components of technology that should be able to start addressing those issues. But NTT alone won't be able to address to these big problems. So we have created a thing called IOwn Forum. We are along with Sony and Intel, and we envision that as a forum with all the partners in the forum, we can address these issues as a more like an industry, as a basically as a group.
Right, using the collective brain trust, so to speak.
Yeah.
So how will you report or show progress for those of us who are watching in the industry, the efforts that IOwn is making?
So still up. So IOwn in the IOwn Forum, we made an announcement of the initial ideas in October last year in 2019. So it's still relatively new initiatives, and we are in the process of officially accepting the membership to this forum. So that's certainly one way to look at the progress is how many different partners is joining this this endeavor together. That's one thing. Certainly, you can look at as a progress status. But
and who can join as a member?
Basically, anyone who is interested in can look at can join. Yeah, we can send you the. Well, I'm sure there's a link to. Link I can show you that which.
Sure.
Yeah, and all that. But yeah, anyone can join. Yep.
Okay.
And then another way to look at the progress is certainly that. So I talked about problem set, and obviously we need to break it down to different pieces, and I don't think you can approach all those problems at the same time. So break it down to a couple different meaningful ways, and then we have to come up with the roadmaps to address those issues. So those things need to happen. Memberships is one thing, and then also actual plan to tackle those the problems is another, and then those things kind of need to go concurrently. So that's what maybe another way to look at the progress of this endeavor.
Okay. Do you foresee adding maybe working groups, for example, to address specific issues that we've discussed?
I would foresee that that's probably most likely the scenario. I cannot tell you exactly what kind of work group is going to be created. It's too early to say that, but yeah, that's the natural progress that I would imagine this is going to take place.
Right. That makes sense. Well, we'll have to watch closely and certainly look forward to you providing us some updates on how things are going there. I want to thank you so much for your time today. It's been great having you on the Light Reading Podcast.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for having me, and I appreciated your time.
Okay. Thanks.
I want to thank Avast for sponsoring this week's podcast. Avast partners with network operators around the world protecting the digital lives of their customers. With over 15 years of experience delivering carrier-grade security solutions, you can trust them to help build solutions consumers can rely on to keep them safe today and to protect them against future threats. Let Avast help you build a safer digital world for your customers. Learn more at avast.com/partners. That's avast.com/partners. That is it. That's our show. Thanks very much to Kazu Gomi, the president and CEO of NTT Research, for his time and insights. Thanks to our producer, Tian Fu, for making us sound so good even when we don't. Thanks to Kelsey Ziser for not only having good questions, but also taking over the interview in the second half of the podcast when I was having technical difficulties. Well done, Kelsey. Thanks to you, dear listener, because if you weren't paying attention, we wouldn't be able to get away with doing all of this at work. And please tell a friend to subscribe, and thanks for listening to the Light Reading Podcast.